The stars above the Seltora sky were fading behind smoke. Mira stood at the edge of a ruined courtyard, her hands bound tightly with metal cuffs. The once beautiful towers of her city now lay in pieces, broken by the massive war machines of the Vancor Empire, a ruthless alien race that traveled from system to system, capturing planets and enslaving their people. She had been a proud officer in the Seltoran defense fleet. Her people had fought with courage, but they were no match for the power of the Vancor. Their ships were stronger, their weapons were deadlier, and worst of all, they had no mercy. Now Myra was just another prisoner. A large transport ship waited nearby, its black metal hull humming with energy. Vancor guard stall, armored creatures with dark eyes and glowing staffs pushed Mira and the other captured Seltorans forward. No one dared resist. Everyone had heard what happened to those who did. Mira kept her eyes forward, refusing to let the guards see fear in her. She was not afraid to die. What she feared was something worse, being made into a servant, a tool, a slave. She had heard the stories, entire species taken from their homes, sent across the galaxy to work for the Empire. They were beaten, forced to serve in silence, never to see freedom again. But there was one part of the stories that Myra never believed: the humans. According to old rumors, humans had also been conquered long ago. No one had ever seen one. Some said they were weak, quiet creatures who didn't fight back. Others said they were clever but broken, scattered across the Empire, doing simple jobs just to survive. Mira didn't know what to believe, but it didn't matter now. The transport lifted off, carrying her and the others into orbit. She sat silently as the ship entered deep space. No windows, no light, only the cold hum of the engines and the eyes of the guards watching their every move. After many long hours, or perhaps days, Mira and the others arrived at a massive space station. It floated like a giant metal spider in the void, surrounded by smaller ships and defense platforms. "This is where we live now," a Seltoran elder whispered beside her. "Work, eat, sleep, work again until we forget who we are." Myra didn't answer. She wouldn't forget. They were separated into work groups, each assigned to different parts of the station. Myra was taken to a large hangar bay, where captured machines were being repaired. A strange mix of aliens moved through the space toll, short, scaled, furry. Some walked upright, others crawled or floated. All were silent. All wore the same dull gray uniforms, with thick metal collars around their necks. As Mira was led to her station, she noticed one figure standing alone in the corner. He was not tall, his skin was pale, his dark hair short and messy. His face looked tired, but his eyes, they were sharp, focused, watching everything. The human Mira stopped for a moment. She had never seen one in person before. He looked ordinary, no weapons, no armor, but something about him felt different. He wasn't moving like the others. He wasn't afraid. "Keep walking," the guard snapped. But Mira did as she was told, but she glanced back once more. The human had seen her too. He didn't smile, he didn't speak, but he gave a small nod. It surprised her, a greeting, a sign of respect, or a warning. Her first few days were long and painful. She was made to carry heavy parts, clean old tools, and help fix damaged ships. The Vancor overseers shouted often, though they rarely spoke directly. Most commands were given through metal devices that buzzed when you disobeyed. Mira stayed quiet and watched. The human worked nearby, fixing things with careful hands. He didn't speak to anyone, but he didn't seem broken. His collar blinked with the same red light as hers, but he moved freely, with purpose. One day, a large crate began to fall from a loader above her. Mira froze. There was no time to run, but before she could think, a strong arm pulled her back. The crate slammed into the floor just inches from her feet. It was the human. He let go quickly, saying nothing, and returned to his station. A few other slaves stared in shock. No one usually helped anyone else. It was too dangerous. That night, Myra approached him cautiously as they scrubbed parts in silence. "You saved me," she said quietly. He looked up. His voice was calm and low. "Didn't want to see you get crushed. You could have been punished." "Maybe," he shrugged. "But I wasn't." She hesitated. "What's your name?" "Corin." "A simple name, no rank, no title, just Corin." "I'm Mira." He gave a small nod. "I know." They worked in silence for a while, and Mira felt something shift inside her. She had expected nothing but cruelty here. Instead, the first being to show her kindness was a human one of the so-called broken ones. But Corin didn't seem broken at all. Each day after that, Mira began to notice more. Corin never flinched when guards walked by. He fixed machines faster than anyone else. And once, when a young alien boy dropped a heavy tool, Corin stepped in and took the punishment without a word. Why? She couldn't understand it. He had no reason to help others, no promise of reward, no path to freedom, and yet, he acted as if he chose to be kind. That night, as they rested in the cold sleeping chambers, Mira whispered, "You don't act like the others. You don't act like you're a prisoner." Corin opened his eyes. "That's because I don't feel like one. You wear the same collar." He touched it lightly. "A collar doesn't control who I am inside." Myra didn't answer. She wasn't sure she believed him. Not yet, but for the first time since her capture, she felt something different. Not safety, not joy, hope. The days on the Vancour space station passed slowly, each one blending into the next. The machines never stopped humming, the lights never dimmed, and the guards never smiled. For most prisoners, it was a place where hope came to die. But not for Myra. Ever since the human Corin saved her from the falling crate, she had begun to feel something newer, quiet fire inside her. It wasn't strong, not yet, but it was there. Each time she saw him working, calm and focused, she wondered, what makes him different? Mira had always been proud. Her people were known for their strength and discipline, but here, among aliens, from dozens of worlds, she felt like just another broken tool. And yet Corin didn't seem broken at all. One morning, they were assigned to the same task, repairing a damaged landing craft. Myra held the tools while Corin worked under the metal frame. His hands moved quickly, with steady skill. "You've done this before," Myra said quietly. Corin's voice came from under the ship. "A few times. You were a mechanic, something like that." "Back home," Myra frowned. "Where is home for you?" There was a pause. Then he said, "Earth. Small planet. Blue skies. Lots of rain." Myra tried to picture it. She had read about Earth long ago in her academy days. It was far from her home system, on the edge of the older star lanes, conquered early by the Vancour. Not many stories made it out. "Did you miss it?" she asked. Corin slid out from under the ship and looked up at her. His eyes were serious but not sad. "Every day, but I haven't given up on seeing it again." Myra almost laughed. "Do you really think you'll ever go back?" "I know I will," he said simply. Myra looked at him for a long moment. He truly believed it. In a place where most gave up, this human still dreamed of freedom. Later that day they were sent to carry scrap metal to the melting chambers. It was hot, heavy work. The guards watched closely, ready to strike at any sign of delay. As they lifted a large metal panel together, Myra asked, "Why do you help people here? You took the punishment for that boy last week. You saved me." "Why?" Corin didn't answer right away. He set the panel down and wiped sweat from his brow. "Because I remember who I am," he said at last. "And I remember what humans are." "What does that mean?" He looked at her. "It means we don't forget how to care, even in places like this." Mira was quiet. That idea felt strange to her. In her training, she had been taught to survive by strength, by silence, by not getting attached. But Corin, he was strong in a different way. That evening, the slaves gathered in the sleeping quarters. They were not allowed to speak loudly or move around after work. But Myra noticed something unusual. A small group of workers sat near Corin, listening. As he told them something in a low voice, she moved closer. "And so, the wall exploded," Corin was saying, his voice calm and steady. "The creature flew backward into the mud, and my friend just stood there, soaked in oil, holding a frying pan like it was a sword." A few listeners chuckled quietly. Even Mira found herself smiling. It was a story, a funny one, simple, and from another world. For a moment the room felt warmer when he noticed her. Corin gave her a nod. "You're telling stories now?" she asked as she sat beside him. "Sometimes it helps," he said. "It reminds them of life outside these walls." "You think that matters?" He looked around the room. "Yes, the guards want us to forget who we are. They want us to become machines. But stories, memories, they keep us human." Myra thought about that. She had dreams sometimes of home, of sunlight, of her mother's voice, but every day they faded more and more. Maybe Corin was right. Maybe remembering was a kind of strength. The next day, something went wrong in the repair bay. One of the Vancour machines sparked and caught fire. A pipe burst, and steam filled the air. A young worker, thin and small, with green skin, screamed in fear, frozen near the flames. The guards shouted. Others backed away. But Mira didn't think. She ran forward through the smoke and grabbed the boy's arm, pulling him back just as the floor gave way. He tumbled into her arms, coughing, but alive. Corin arrived a moment later, helping her drag the boy to safety. The overseer stormed over, furious, but Corin stepped between them. "She acted on my command," he said calmly. "If anyone failed, it was me." The guard stared at him, unsure. Corin's voice was steady, his eyes unblinking. After a moment, the overseer turned and walked away. Myra stood there, shocked. Why did you do that? I saved him. You did, Corin agreed. But if they punished you for it, what would have been the point? You lied. I protected you. Myra didn't know what to say. Corin wasn't a soldier. He had no weapon, he had no rank or power. But again and again he stood in the way of harm for her. For others it didn't make sense. Or maybe it made more sense than anything else here. That night, Myra sat beside him in the sleeping room. I thought humans were weak, she admitted. That's what the record said. I thought your people were conquered early because you had no strength. Corin chuckled softly. We were conquered because we weren't ready, but weakness. No, that's not what we are. What are you then? Corin turned to her, eyes calm but burning with something deep. We're the ones who get back up. No matter how many times we fall. Myra stared at him. She had been ready to give up, ready to live quietly and die without a fight. But now, she wasn't so sure. There was something in Corin's voice. Something in the way he spoke. The way he stood like a fire that wouldn't go out. And that fire was starting to spread. Myra woke to the sound of heavy boots in the hallway. The guards were doing another surprise check. That meant standing still, eyes forward, while the Vancour marched through the sleeping quarters. Every prisoner knew what to do. No talking. No moving. Myra stood in line beside Corin, her back straight. But her thoughts were restless. Lately, something had changed inside her. She was no longer just surviving. She was watching, listening, and most of all thinking. It was because of Corin. Ever since he pulled her from that falling crate, he had shown her a different kind of strength. Not the kind that comes from weapons or power, but from courage, kindness, and purpose. His calm voice and steady eyes made others feel braver, even in this place of silence and fear, and Myra wasn't the only one who noticed. More and more prisoners were gathering near Corin when the guards weren't looking. They didn't speak openly, but their eyes held questions and hope. A few even smiled sometimes. That was new. After the guards passed, the room slowly relaxed. Myra sat back down and looked over at Corin. You're planning something, she said quietly. Corin looked at her with calm eyes. What makes you think that? You don't act like someone waiting to be free. You act like someone preparing to make it happen. He didn't deny it. Myra leaned closer. If you have a plan, I want in. Corin studied her face for a moment. Then he nodded. Once, the next evening, while others slept, Corin led her to a dark corner of the supply bay. 3 others were already there, an older worker with thick arms, a quiet woman with sharp eyes, and a young alien boy with clever fingers. Myra recognized them all. She had seen them working hard, staying quiet, but always alert. Corin spoke. In a low voice, this is Myra. She saved the boy during the fire last week. We can trust her. The others nodded. We don't have weapons, the older man said, but we have hands, minds, and the will to act. That's more than most. Corin placed a small tool on the ground, a metal chip, half the size of a finger. This, he said, is our beginning. Myra leaned closer. It looked like a damaged connector chip from a control panel. What does it do? It gives us access, Corin explained, to the lower station tunnels, power lines, air ducts. The guards don't go down there often. The young alien boy spoke next. I've mapped part of the tunnels. There's a path that leads near the landing bay. Myra's heart began to race. You want to escape? No, Corin said. We want to start something bigger. Over the next few days, Myra worked harder than ever, but not just at her assigned tasks. She watched how the guards moved. She counted how many steps it took them to patrol the repair bay. She noted which workers were brave, which were curious, and which still had light in their eyes. And she kept talking to Corin, learning more. He didn't tell her everything, not yet, but he spoke of hope, of freedom, of using small chances to make big changes. You can't fight a mountain, he told her once, but you can make it crack, one stone at a time. One morning, a new prisoner arrived. She was tall, with silver markings on her face and fierce eyes. The guards treated her roughly, and others kept their distance. But Myra noticed something in her walk. She wasn't afraid. Later that night, Myra approached her. You fought back, didn't you? The woman looked up. Yes, and I'll do it again. Good, Myra said. There's someone you should meet. By the end of the week, their group had grown to 12. They met only in secret, always in different corners of the station. Some brought stolen tools, others brought maps or overheard news from the guards. Corin never gave orders. He asked questions. He listened. That surprised Myra. She had been trained under commanders who barked commands and expected silence. But Corin built something else: trust. One night, as they sat near a broken power relay, Myra finally asked, Why are you really doing this? For yourself. Corin shook his head. I'm doing it because we can't wait for someone to save us. We are the someone. But what if we fail? Corin looked at her. Then others will see we tried. And they'll try to. Myra was quiet. She had never met anyone like him, not just brave, hopeful, and that hope was starting to feel real. The next day brought a test. A large machine broke down in the hangar, one of the main loaders used to move supply crates. The guards shouted, panicked, and ordered workers to fix it quickly. Corin stepped forward calmly. Let me handle it. The guard shoved him back. You don't give orders, human. But the machine was smoking, and the guards didn't know how to fix it. One finally pointed at Corin. You fix. Now. As Corin worked, Mira stood nearby, pretending to clean. She watched as his fingers moved with care, not just to repair, but to alter. He slipped a small chip behind one of the panels. It clicked into place, unnoticed by the guards. Later, when they returned to the sleeping room, Mira whispered, "What was that?" "Access," he said. "We control that loader now. It can move cargo or us." Mira's heart pounded, but plan was becoming real. That night, the 12 met again. Corin spoke quietly. "We're not strong enough to fight the guards, not yet. But if we move fast, we can take control of the cargo bay and block the exits. It will give us time to send a signal, let the other prisoners know we're rising." The older man nodded. "And if the guards stop us," Corin looked at each of them, "then we fall. But we fall standing." Mira smiled. For the first time since her capture, she felt like a soldier again, not a prisoner, a fighter. Later, as she lay on her bunk, Mira whispered into the dark, "Corin." He opened his eyes across from her. "If this works, what then?" "Then we give others the courage to try," he said. "And one day, we all walk free." Myra closed her eyes, the fire inside her burning brighter than ever. This wasn't just a plan, it was a beginning. The station lights flickered briefly, just as the morning horn echoed through the prison walls. Most workers didn't notice. They were too tired, too used to strange noises and broken systems. But Myra noticed. So did Corin. The flicker was a signal. It meant the loader machine was ready. Today was the day. Myra sat silently on her sleeping bunk, tightening the straps of her worn gloves. Across from her, Corin checked a small bundle of tools hidden in his jacket. Around the room, their quiet team members nodded one by one. No words were spoken. They didn't need to be. Everything was in place. The plan was simple, but dangerous. They would start the revolt not with a fight, but with a blockade. The moment the loaders moved, they would cut power to the gates and lock the supply corridors. That would give them time, just a few minutes, to call out to other workers and gather numbers. From there, they would hold as long as they could. Not to escape yet, but to show others that standing up was possible. Corin had said it best the night before. "We light the first spark. After that, others will carry the fire." Myra and Corin were assigned to different areas that morning. Myra went to the welding chamber. She joined the other workers, lifting heavy scrap into the furnace. Her hands worked, but her mind raced. Across the bay, she saw the silver-marked woman rave already in position near the power cables. A nod passed between them. Then, the lights flickered again. Once, twice. That was the signal in the cargo area. Corin sat inside the loader machine, pretending to check its systems. A guard barked at him, not paying much attention. Corin pressed a hidden switch inside the control panel. The loader screen glowed red, and the machine roared to life. Not in work mode, but in override mode. Its arms lifted high, blocking the main gate. Another loader, controlled by the clever alien boy from their group, followed behind and sealed the second entrance. From Reva's side, the power snapped off. The lights dimmed. The guards shouted, and then dashed chaos. Mira dropped the metal plate in her hands and ran to the center of the welding chamber. Everyone, to the cargo gates. It's happening now. For a second, no one moved. Then, Reva appeared beside her, holding a glowing rod in her hand. "Move now. This is your chance." One by one, workers dropped their tools, eyes wide, unsure, but willing to follow. They had heard rumors, whispers, hopes. Now, it was real. They followed Myra as she led them through the smoking side hallway, into the cargo area. Inside, Corin stood atop the loader, his voice loud and clear. "This is not just a rebellion. This is a choice. We can stay quiet and wait for death, or we can rise." The guards shouted for backup. Doors slammed. Sirens rang. But workers kept coming, more than they had hoped. Myra couldn't count them all. Some looked scared, some looked angry, but they were here. The guards fired stun charges into the air. One hit the loader and made it shake. Corin didn't flinch. He jumped down and joined Mira. "We hold this bay as long as we can," he said, "and we send a signal to every worker on this station. Let's do it, Myra said, fire burning in her chest. They split into groups. Reva and the older man, 10, held the south entrance with steel bars and tools. The alien boy ran to the old communications panel, trying to send a coded message. Through the maintenance lines, Mira and Corin went to the main platform, rallying the workers. Then, the heavy door opened and more guards poured in. The real fight had begun, but it wasn't a battle of weapons, it was a battle of courage. The guards shouted, but the workers pushed back, lifting crates, swinging rods, forming lines. Corin stood in the front, shielding two younger prisoners. Reva grabbed a guard's shock baton with her bare hands and snapped it in two, and Mira felt her body move like it had in the old days, before capture. She wasn't just surviving now, she was fighting for something. Each second they held the line, more workers came. From the kitchens, from the mining shafts, even from the deep furnace levels, the fire was spreading. Then a loud bang echoed through the walls. The control room above the cargo bay had been sealed, but now it opened. A high-ranking Vancour officer stepped out, flanked by elite guards. His voice echoed across the bay. Stop now, and you will not be harmed. Corin looked up. He's lying. Mira stepped beside him. They always lie. But some workers hesitated. Fear returned to their eyes. Corin saw Itan did something no one expected. He stepped forward. Alone. He raised his hands, but not in surrender. I am Corin of Earth. I do not fear you. The officer laughed. You think you are a leader? You are a broken tool. No, Corin said. I'm a match. And now we've lit the fire. Behind him, Mira raised her fist. Reva lifted her tool. 10 roared like thunder, and every worker shouted back. The bay shook with their voices. The officer paused. The workers weren't afraid anymore. Then the alien boy shouted from the far end of the bay. It worked. The signal is sent. Corin turned to Myra, eyes bright. He did it. All over the station, through wires, pipes, and secret lines, the message went out. The fire has begun. Rise. Even if the guards took back this bay, even if this moment ended, the idea would live on. And that was enough. Myra looked at Corin, heart racing. You did it. Corin smiled, a tired but proud smile. We did it. The signal spread like wildfire through the Vancour space station. From the dark mining shafts to the crowded food halls, workers stopped what they were doing and listened. For the first time in many years, they heard a message of hope, a call to rise. Back in the cargo bay, Myra and Corin stood among the growing crowd of workers. Their faces were grim but determined. Some were bruised or tired, but all carried a new fire in their eyes. The guards had retaken control of the power station and restored some of the lights, but the spirit of the workers was unbroken. Corin turned to Myra. This is just the beginning. They will come for us harder now. Myra nodded. Then we must be ready. In the days that followed, the station's underground tunnels buzzed with secret meetings and quiet plans. Corin, Mira, and their group moved from place to place, sharing news and rallying more workers. At first, many were afraid. The Vancour guards were ruthless, and the prisoners knew what punishment meant. But as the message spread, fear gave way to courage. One day, Mira found herself standing before a crowd of workers deep in the mining tunnels. She looked at the tired faces, green skin, purple eyes, different shapes, but all tired of slavery. We have a choice, she told them. We can stay quiet, or we can stand. Together, we can make this station a place of freedom. The workers murmured, and then one by one, they raised their hands. Mira smiled. Good, we rise. We fight not with weapons, but with hope. But the Vancour were not blind. The officers increased patrols. They searched sleeping quarters and food lines. Some workers were taken away, disappeared in the dark. One night, Corin's group gathered in a hidden room. Mira's heart pounded. As Corin spoke quietly, they're trying to break us. We must stay strong. How? Asked Tan, the older man. By spreading the message, by protecting each other, and by taking control of more parts of the station. Reva nodded. The communications tower is vulnerable. If we control it, we can block the guards' messages. Corin looked around. It's dangerous, but it could turn the tide. Myra clenched her fists. Then we do it. The plan was set. The communications tower was high in the station, guarded by elite soldiers and advanced security systems. But Corin's team was smart and careful. They moved at night, using tunnels and vents to avoid patrols. Mira led a small group, her heart pounding with every step. At one point, a guard almost caught them. Mira held her breath as the soldier passed. Then they slipped away, silent as shadows. Finally, they reached the tower's base. The entrance was locked with a complicated panel. Corin knelt, pulling out small tools. I can get us inside, he said. Minutes passed like hours. Then, with a soft click, the door slid open. Inside, the communications room was filled with blinking lights and buzzing machines. Reva and the others worked quickly, cutting wires and disabling alarms. Corin connected his small device to the main console. We're in, he said. Mira watched as the screen flickered. Now, we block their commands and send our own. Corin typed a message. It was simple, clear. To all prisoners and workers on this station, freedom is possible. Rise together. We are stronger than fear. He pressed send. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the screen blinked. The guard's commands stopped. The station's loudspeakers filled with the new message. Workers all over the station heard it. The next morning, the guards were confused. Their orders were ignored. Communications were scrambled. The workers moved with purpose. Small groups gathered, blocking patrols and opening locked doors. It was no longer just a message, it was a movement. But the Van Corps would not give up easily. The officers called for reinforcements from the nearest military ship. A large vessel loomed in orbit, ready to send troops and weapons to crush the rebellion. Corin knew time was short. We have to hold as much as we can before they arrive, he told Mira. She looked at him. We will together. Over the next days, battles erupted throughout the station, not with great armies or lasers, but with the courage of the workers. They used their knowledge of the station to outsmart the guards in one corridor. Myra led a group that blocked a supply route, forcing guards to retreat. In another, Corin disabled security cameras, giving workers safe passage. Every victory was small, but they added up. More prisoners joined the fight. The station was changing. One evening, Mira sat with Corin and Reva near the central furnace. Exhausted but hopeful, Mira asked, "What happens if the reinforcements come?" Corin looked at the stars outside the small window. "We fight," he said. "Not just for this station, but for every slave in the galaxy." Reva smiled. "And maybe one day, for freedom everywhere." Myra felt a surge of pride. For the first time, she was part of something bigger. Not just a prisoner, not just a worker. A spark of change. Suddenly, alarms blared. The military ship in orbit had deployed landing pods. Corin stood, eyes sharp. The final battle begins. Myra stood beside him. The rising tide would not stop now. The heavy metal doors of the station's hangar shook as landing pods hit the floor with loud thuds. From the outside, the military ship in orbit sent hundreds of elite soldiers to crush the rebellion. Inside the station, Mira and Corin gathered their fighters quickly. The air was thick with tension and determination. "We've come too far to lose now," Corin said, voice steady but fierce. "This is our moment." Mira looked around at the tired faces, workers, prisoners, even a few former guards who had switched sides. "We fight not just for ourselves," she said, "but for every life held captive by fear." The landing pods hissed open, and armored soldiers poured out. They moved like a storm, shouting orders and firing stun batons. But the workers were ready. They blocked corridors with heavy crates. They disabled security systems with stolen tools. They used their knowledge of the station's narrow tunnels to ambush the invaders. Myra moved swiftly, guiding a group through ventilation shafts to flank the soldiers. Corin led another group, in the main cargo bay, using loader machines as barricades. The battle was fierce but quiet, no blinding lasers or explosions, just the clatter of metal, shouted commands, and the steady courage of those who refused to give up. Myra caught sight of Reva locking eyes with a soldier, advancing too fast. With a quick move, Reva disarmed him and forced him to retreat. "I told you, I'm not afraid," she said. But Myra smiled. Despite the danger, hours passed, and the workers pushed back the soldiers inch by inch. The Van Corps commander in charge of the troops grew frustrated. He sent more forces deeper into the station, but every attack was met with new resistance. The workers had become something more than slaves. They were a force. In the control room, Corin and a small team worked to maintain the communication blackout. They needed to keep the soldiers from calling reinforcements or coordinating their attacks. Corin's fingers flew over the controls as alarms blared around him. Suddenly, a door burst open, and two soldiers charged inside. Corin barely had time to raise a shield before the fight began. Meanwhile, Mira led a squad toward the lower docking bay. If they could control the docks, they could stop more soldiers from landing. They moved carefully, using shadows and tunnels to avoid detection. At the bay entrance, Myra stopped. A soldier stood guard, scanning the area. Myra signaled her team to hold. She took a deep breath and stepped forward. "Hey," she called out loudly. The soldier spun around, weapon raised. Before he could fire, Mira's team rushed him. The fight was quick. Myra disarmed the soldier and they tied him up. With the guard captured, Myra's group moved inside. They sealed the bay doors and set traps for any incoming soldiers. The docks were now theirs. Back in the cargo bay, Corin fought off the last two soldiers, breathing hard. He looked around. The workers had held the bay, the communication blackout still worked, and the docks were under Mira's control. Then a new sound filled the station, the roar of the military ship preparing to fire. Commander was ready to use force. Corin gathered his group. "We can't hold much longer," he said, "but we can send a message." Myra nodded. "Then let's make it count." Corin connected a final device to the main transmitter. He sent a signal not just to the workers, but out into space. A message for anyone listening. A call for help. Promise of resistance. Outside the station, a distant fleet received the message. Across the stars, others heard the words of freedom. And the fight had begun. Inside the station, the workers braced themselves. The military ship fired a warning blast, shaking the station's walls. But Myra and Corin stood firm. They had lit the fire, and no force could put it out. The Vancourt military ship hung in orbit, a giant shadow, against the stars. Inside the station, the workers held their ground, waiting. The station shook from the ship's warning blasts. Metal groaned, lights flickered, but the workers did not back down. Myra stood beside Corin in the central command room. Around them, workers patched wounds, loaded tools, and prepared for whatever came next. Corin looked out a window to the stars. "We've done what many thought impossible," he said softly. "We've shown that even the smallest light can challenge the dark." Myra smiled, but her eyes were serious. "But this is just the beginning." Suddenly, a bright flash lit the sky. A fleet of ships, small, fast, and armed, came out of hyperspace. They were not Vancourt, they were humans. The new fleet fired warning shots at the military ship, forcing it to retreat. Myra's heart raced. The help had arrived. The humans docked their ships. With the station's bays, soldiers and engineers poured out, joining the workers. The tide had truly turned. Corin met the human commander, a tall woman. "With calm eyes, you answered our call," Corin said. The commander nodded. "Freedom is a cause we fight for everywhere." Together they planned the final push to take the station fully. The Vancourt officers, seeing their forces dwindling and the reinforcements arriving, began to surrender. Workers cheered. Chains fell away. Myra walked through the station's halls, feeling a new air. Where once there had been fear, now was hope. Where once there had been silence, now was laughter. In the central square, workers and soldiers gathered. Corin spoke to the crowd. "Today, we are free." Myra stood beside him, tears in her eyes. The humans helped repair the station. Together they built a new plaza home for all who wanted freedom. The station was no longer a prison, it was a beacon. Myra looked up at the stars. She thought of all who had suffered. She thought of all who had fought, and she knew this was only the start. "Freedom," she whispered, "is worth every fight." The end.